Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin. Friday, July 22nd, 2016, and walking to work. And I've been doing some experimenting in YouTube recently with alternating between these walking through New York, just sort of stream of consciousness videos to plan each day, and the talking head coding videos where I use the webcam to put my head down here and then generally do some full screen coding, usually of Python and usually in Vim, but recently now in Jupyter Notebook. I've started a new series. It gives each thumbnail that YouTube chooses a very similar look, given that it's Jupyter Notebook all the time now. And even the way YouTube sorts the thumbnails of the videos on the channel page, it's lining up all the latest walking videos in one column and all the coding videos in another column. And I think it's pretty cool. It's all starting to sort of create a visual signature that is, I guess, part of my brand. And so I'm going to try and roll with that for a while, except that it will get interrupted with, say, my weekends in the Catskills and stuff like that, where I, throw up different kinds of video. And I'm still going to be letting that stuff reach my YouTube channel because it's kind of all blended together, all one big thing. And that's almost part of the point of what I'm trying to do here. And my writing on the subway this morning was really about learning Python as your first spoken language, or learning Python just as you learn your first spoken language, such as English, and then go on with the opening paragraph. Well, too late, you already speak English if you're reading this. So what am I talking about? And it is a contrasting of different languages right away, jumping right into what are some of the characteristics of Java, C#, JavaScript, Haskell, Ruby, Lisp, and all the variations of C that are out there. If you're going to live in the Apple world, Objective-C. If you're using the GCC compiler to create true binary code, then C++, or just normal C. The ANSI standard is always an interesting choice because it only has something like 40 commands, and it's an easy language to learn, principle, and a difficult language in reality to master for life, demanding you to build your own frameworks. And then there's Python, which is one particular framework that has been built up on C. You just load the C code. It's a pretty common exercise when you want to say, hey, what is Python doing? Well, let's take a look at the C source. And then there are even more interconnections between the Python and the C worlds because of all the API hooks between the two languages. So I've heard the advice given that if you want to learn C, one of the ways you can do it is look in the Python source code. Look at the Python source code written in C, find where the hooks to the C language are, and try understanding them. And that's a good spot because it's this blend, it's this mix of synthesis, a Rosetta Stone, if you will, between Python and C. So it's common, increasingly common, and easy to start coding in Python. It's different than many other languages on many levels, and its differentness really makes it stand out as something different amongst its peers, something like the alien of the bunch, or maybe better than alien, an evolved version of us from the future. Python feels a lot like that. So whenever you see some old school thing that was so good and implemented so well back in the day, and people are keeping it alive, you'll find that the preferred method to keep it alive is... am I still recording? A call came in. I believe I am. Awesome. The preferred method to keep those old systems alive is increasingly writing a Python wrapper around it. Something that essentially maps the functions of the old school thing lurking back there, and Python, with you using one of the standard modern implementations, just with some package that gives you an API. In other words, commands you can write in Python. The ability to code in Python to communicate with, but it won't feel like communicating with another system, but controlling some other system from Python code. And people don't talk about it a lot. That's essentially where NumPy, the super popular package on Python, came from, that allows you to do high performance matrix analysis, tabular data, sort of churning through it fast. And it does that by taking some old Fortran code and I guess writing a Python wrapper for it, but then compiling the whole thing into a optimized binary code module that Python uses, and that tons of other packages are actually based on top of. Well, anyway, I think that was a little divergence. What I was really here to talk about today is how in my move over to Jupyter Notebook, a lot of things I've tried to do from the past are suddenly becoming both easier, and I'm seeing them under a new light. I'm able to optimize my code better, and in order to do some really neat tricks, I figured out how to, well, first of all, the background here is that Python imports from other files, usually sitting in the same directory as the file that starts the code execution process. But that file gets to import the contents of other files, and when it does, that creates a namespace so that you can address any function inside that imported, from that imported function as the name of the file dot the name of the class or function that you're importing from there. That's where some of the this dot that namespace comes into play in the Python world. And so sometimes those things that you're importing are actually optimized C compiled code. And so all roads and all paths tend to lead back to C. And so C will always be on the agenda of programming languages that you should learn and understand, because everything's built from C. And then another language, which is now the universal user interface language, the same way that PostScript had become the universal, albeit you had to pay a licensing royalty to Adobe, laser printer page description language, and some systems even tried to use it for the real-time user interface. The next computer used PostScript. But PostScript and the print static world has given way to the dynamic world, and that dynamic world is JavaScript on the web browser. That's the user interface language. That is a language that you need to learn, but not as your primary spoken language. And in the same fashion, you're going to have to learn subset languages such as HTML, regular expressions, SQL. And so you're never going to get away from learning lots of different languages. That's just part of the technology scene for the foreseeable future. So prepare to learn multiple. And against that backdrop of so many languages that you must know for various reasons, why not just choose one of them as your day-to-day language, right? That's the question. Should just be JavaScript, right? But I'm thinking, or alternatively C. And if you want to be way out there in wacky space doing things that nobody else can do, you would probably choose Lisp, common Lisp scheme, one of the variations that is popular on the web these days, like Clojure. But not Python. Very few things compel you from a purely ideological standpoint, and even an efficiency standpoint, to choose Python. So why is its popularity still growing? And why am I advocating teaching it as young as you can reasonably pull that off? And my daughter's 5.5, and I'm going to try and start her on Python now. I've already done a little bit with Blockly and Scratch, so she understands the basic principles of visual coding and automation, and those little vice-like C's that represent loops and blocks in Blockly, appropriately enough. And let's see, 29.6, okay. So she's ready for the type-in interface. I'm going to try and get her typing as using a keyboard as soon as possible. She's had one around, but I haven't really done things to entice her into using the keyboard. So I have to entice her, so I have to make Python look interesting. But again, back to the why Python question. Well, it's because the framework that was built on top of C that happens to be called Python is a really good framework. It's a specification with a working implementation. And so everyone who wants Python as it was conceptually designed by Guido van Rossum, I'm coming to learn it's pronounced. I'm watching more of the videos like the PyCons and stuff, so I'm hearing names spoken out loud more. I'm going to try and get it right because I would love to engage myself in the Python community. A friend of mine, Tanya Nam, tried to get me to go to one of those PyCons, and I said no because family and whatever. But I'm starting to regret it, as I regret not taking a Python. And it must have been 2004 when a friend of mine, Guillaume, I always mispronounce his last name, so I won't try, but he's one of the VPs of Scala Digital Signage in Japan, who I've become great online friends with over the years, tried to get me to go to Python when he heard I was going to be taking up Ruby, and here I am, flipped 180 degrees now, that is many years later, and I found my own route to Python, basically resisting it at every turn, resisting, and had I not resisted Python, I'd probably be a lot further along now, but I would also be predisposed to the Python 2.x world. And joining now is really the right time for all of those people who are like me, who put off Python forever for whatever reason. Their Mac friends all, peer pressured him into Ruby because of Ruby on Rails. The full stack developer world with the mean stack meanly got you to admit that JavaScript was the one true language, which in many ways it is, but it's the one true user interface language. There's so many reasons. If you really wanted to make the bucks and you wanted an enterprise language, you would be using C# from Microsoft, which is that C with the hash symbol, the tic-tac-toe symbol, pronounced C#, or you'd be using Java, which is backed now by both Oracle, who bought Sun and got it as an asset, and Google, who chose Java as the development platform language for Android. So Java isn't going away, highly supported, and a lot of financial institutions like it, and probably the military, I would guess, as well. So if you wanted the big bucks, you would go with Java or C#. And the list goes on and on. So against that backdrop, why Python? Why in the world? Well, that I'm already at nearly 15 minutes. It would take another 15 minutes to enumerate the reasons. But suffice to say, the doing so, the enumeration, would be most easily accomplished in Python. You wouldn't have to filter out any prototype objects to do a simple loop. You wouldn't have to build up structure around it. You would go for a reason in reasons _2_use_Python. So that's one of the weaknesses, but that's just a subjective specification called PEP8 to make your variable names long and descriptive. Let me restart. For a reason in reasons to use Python, indent, print a reason. Done. That's the hello world of looping through collections in Python. That's it. Nothing more. And that makes it a fairly delightful environment amongst many, many, many other reasons. And I'm sure I'll be doing other videos, but I think I'm going to zero in on sub-reasons that align to feature names. I had pushed out a video called Python Open With, and the open with was in double quotes, and I think I mentioned regexps, which are one of the most misunderstood things in Python. I think they're a relatively new feature, but they're a play on list comprehensions. There's genexps, that's what they are, generation expressions. Often confused with generators, which are functions that use yield instead of return, that you write in code block notation so that you can send back return values during the execution of the function without waiting to the very end and to send it back as one big piece. The yield keyword lets you send back feedback in little bits, freeze that the execution of that code block in its state, go do something else, and then return, and then pick up from the middle of the execution of that code block. That's important to understand. Pick up from the middle where it left off. So this is a great way to create things that have to stream messages to a user interface, and that's how I used generators and Pipulate. But generator expressions are generally one-liners that look exactly like list comprehensions, but they use parentheses instead, which specifies don't load it all into memory if you can, and just use a cursor or a pointer to step through the original object wherever it is. So if it's a file on disk, for example, it can be tens of millions of lines. I think I did a 100 million, did I do a 10 million? Well, anyway, I think I did a 10 million line file in a video to demonstrate that. And the search hit traffic on it just started going up as expressed by the views. It became one of my popular videos right away. So I do believe I am going to zero in on a nameable feature, such as named tuples, and keep pushing out Python videos that use features I'm already using or am about to use as I get up to them. I just used eval, and I'm making a point that eval isn't always evil, and I think I'm going to push out a video on that piece of code today as my talking head video, and then I'll reverse it. I'll actually publish that ahead of this one, so anyone who actually follows me in real time will have seen that by the time they're seeing this one. So anyway, that's my plan for today. I have a lot of stuff incubating, percolating, or whatever, in Jupyter Notebook that I haven't published about because I'm in my wacky experimental phase. And I'm importing as modules from IPython notebooks, which means I can have my projects that I had previously named Goodsheet and Pipulate loaded side by side under Jupyter Notebook along with the parent sort of task, which I have now decided to name SEO Notebook. And the wonderful video capabilities of using Jupyter Notebook, where I import from other IPython notebooks as my .py file modules, is pretty significant in the awesomeness of the videos I'm going to be able to produce. That's something that has to be shown to be understood. I plan on doing that today. You probably saw it already. So if you did, make sure you use this opportunity to thumbs up this video and to forward it along to anyone else who you think you know who needs to be jumping on the Python bandwagon right about now. because you couldn't have a better starting time when everyone is finally agreeing Python 3.x is the way to go. So you jump in with 3.5, it's already halfway to 4. Jump on now before it's so too late, it's ridiculous. And because of this wonderful code execution environment that runs pretty much the same way on your desktop, be it a Mac, a Windows, or a Linux machine. Jupyter Notebook that you get with the Anaconda install. Do it. You'll not only be able to follow my videos, you'll be able to recreate everything I do, which is half the point of this environment I'm talking about. So anyway, thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you again soon. And as usual, don't forget to subscribe.